What's up, everyone? Make sure you check out the West West Network website at westwestnet.com. Here you can find amazing independent podcasts based in Aotearoa, covering everything from pop culture to mental health. Also, if you enjoy our content and want to support us, please consider clicking on the support button on the homepage of the website. We appreciate your patronage and look forward to delivering more thought-provoking and quality conversations.
West, y'all.
So, you're just going to ask some questions?
No, we just talk.
Okay.
Yeah, we just talk and see what goes. There's no real structure.
You should have structure.
Nah.
Ad-lib.
It's not a podcast with a structure. It'll be like... It won't be a podcast with any structure because it'll be like a TV.
It's
TV radio.
It's randomly 1 through 5. Okay.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
Well, welcome to the back of the bus.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm honoured, and I look forward to discussing what you want to overlook with the candidacy and the issues that we're dealing with council.
Yeah, because you're running right now. You're running for council, not because I just learned because I just got educated on how the structure of the Auckland City Council works. So with the mayor, then the councillors, and then the local board underneath that. But it's then because it's a thing that a lot of people don't know, eh?
Yeah, unfortunately, political science isn't taught in school, and I think it's important. Because when they're getting to that age of understanding the bigger picture, that they eventually will be voting. And I think it's a simple study to actually grasp, quite simple. I can, I don't mind helping the youth with that, being able to understand it and how they contribute to deciding on any candidate. I'm not against or make judgment on somebody, but I do look at them as their history and their experience. So for me, I see it as a tier system. So the mayor's at the top, and he's basically the visionary, and he delivers what he wants to see for the future of Auckland. And then the next tier is the councillors, and originally there wasn't local board members, so they slowly introduced that due to the population growth. And so for myself, my family have been involved with council when it was actually starting to come into fruition. And so they kind of have profiles that they take care of. So a councillor will be elected, and then they might have special experience in a certain area. So it might be transport, it might be infrastructure in that sense, and it might be community. So that's where the councillors need support in some way with local board, because the suburbs have become so populated now. So you're looking at over 100,000 in Waitakere, which is where I'm candidate for, Waitakere Ward Councillor. So so I saw the growth of council to where it is now, and so
How many wards in Auckland as a super city? You got Waitakere, then how many others? Is it every north, south, east, west? They've got one. There's one ward.
Yeah, so it's kind of expanded. It's further up, going up to Warkworth area. So you can see that the mayors have been invited to meetings up in as far as there, and then it goes down through Pukekohe to what is it called? Port Waikato. There's the actual borderline. So that I think that was a good idea in order to support those areas as well. What happened was it used to be Waitakere Council, North Shore Council, Manukau Council and Central. So what happened. I think it's important to know the history from where you're living, and also how it came into fruition. It gives you the chance to see how it's developed, and how we've got into this situation that we are now. So
Because when you talk about the history of it, how obviously the milestone is transitioning into the super city.
Yeah,
So
that was
was there a lot of change?
Unitary plan.
Yeah, no, unitary plan as well. So was it? How much of a change would you say percentage-wise?
Percentage-wise?
Yeah, like change the whole structure of the whole city.
So again, looking at history, originally it always has been Highway 1, and the rail that existed at that time that was owned by the voters gave you access to go south or to go north. So you were able to travel by train. At some stage, they actually put that into using it for delivery services. So that was the only option. But I pointed that out in my Facebook, one of my Facebook posts, adverts, in regards to how are we using what we have available now, instead of rushing into it's quite a hefty debt that the voters and the general public are going to have to carry. And so, I think it's important to look at it from another perspective and actually understand. I mean, you're an architect, right? So architectural technologist, yeah. So you understand that when it comes to topography and on a larger scale, there's always risks, there's safety risks. So that's something that council have to deal with as well when they're planning. And it's for me, it's about having transparency for the public to know before just jumping into situations and making decisions. I'm more of the person to say, hey, look, this is what's happening, and I want you to understand this is happening soon or in the next few years, but this is what it's going to cost. And, I don't think they're informed enough to be able to understand what's going to happen around them. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought up topography, especially in Auckland, because when I think of Auckland City, there's a lot of hills, there's a lot of
Especially for
volcanoes.
West.
Yep, West and North Shore. There's a lot of hills up there. The ridge on the Waitakere Ranges and
the Waitakere Ranges
up in to the Rangi as well.
Is a big influence.
And probably only South Auckland is probably the most flattest part of Auckland City, in general, if you compare it to the rest of the
it is.
The rest
it
of
is.
the
that's
places
right.
in Auckland. But then when I think about that, I think about this push for the cycleways and bikes, and the topography would be a big influence on that, with the hills and that.
Yeah, I see that being an issue, and the reasons why a lot of voters or people don't want to use cycle lanes, and because of the weather issues that we have. It used to be you could actually know the 4 seasons, but in the last 3 years there's a big change, so people don't want to be caught in the rain, and that's an issue. And then there's the safety risk of getting hit by a car, so because of vision.
Yeah. And if I bring back the cycleways again, there's a big push being taken from AT, Auckland Transport, to, and it's you can't get away from it now. There's you can see the cycleways, and you can hear the people complaining, especially when it affects roads around the central part of Auckland. You just hear it on the radio and stuff like that. So
it's got a lot to do with intensification. So if you increase the population, you've got to put in the infrastructure for that, and then looking at the way we're going with emissions, climate emissions, and we're trying to control that. the practical sense is to go cycling. But then there's an issue if you are travelling from west and your job's out south. So, we have to be realistic about that. And I think if it's a choice, it's an option. I think if the public want to have it in the area, that's great. If there's reasons why they're not doing it, then the council need to understand why, because there's obviously challenges. People are lazy. Let's just be honest. They don't want to be out in the cold 6 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning riding to work. I myself used to do that to get to work. So and get home 11 o'clock at night on my bike. So I'm not fearful of the rain or what have you, but it was a lot safer back then, on the roads. It's not so congested like we have with traffic now, So, did that answer your question? Or?
Yeah.
It's not really a question, it was just more of a...
Yeah, it's just more of a topic. It's more of a topic.
Yeah.
Because if I unpack everything, especially to do with cycleways and riding the bike, like that's how I feel right now, being a citizen of Auckland City. Like, it feels like I'm being pushed to ditch my car for a bike.
Well, you are being pushed.
Yeah, exactly. And with things like the AT doing all the stuff that's got and council have got no control of Auckland Transport, is that right? Or they're onto themselves when they talk about cycleways and all that kind of stuff. Is that right?
It's more of a healthy approach, and also for climate and for reducing emissions. So that's the push, and that's why AT are actually trying to encourage. That's a positive way of putting it. That everybody looks at another way of transport getting to work. So,
but not to the detriment of taking your car if you feel like you need to, like for convenience sake. Because I think the problem with public transport now, it's inconvenient, and I think because the time it takes to get
it is inconvenient, but it is also lazy. There's that portion of people that just don't want to do it. You've got to take that into consideration, and you're not there to judge. You're here to say these are your options, and this is the problem. I mean, a good example is I was near Pars Park, and it was 12 in the evening, and some guys are just doing loops around the roundabout, and I'm thinking, isn't their petrol costs just so high, but you just don't care? And
it's probably getting his petrol from Costco.
Possibly. So there's if I'm having to work all the way out South Auckland on a job, I wouldn't want to ride a bike there. I'd have to leave very early to get there, and I can't rely on public transport to be able to support me to get there on time. So there's got to be some sort of, okay, look, we're rushing into something, and the people aren't ready, is how I see it. And we've got to, if elected, I'm going to look at what the actual planning is and discuss it with the other council and the board members for Waitakere area. I'm not the type of person just to jump in and say, I've got this great idea and it's going to work and you're going to do it, because it's not how life works. It works collaborating with others and making something more practical and understanding the issues that they're dealing with, because I know what it's like to ride up the bullock track in Western Springs, because that's how we used to roll. Yeah. But that's because my job was up at Greyland. And so, so there's those issues there that it's about the people making a healthy choice, and if they want to, sometimes I know there are candidates who are pushing for it, but they're not getting the answer that they want. I notice there's a lot of bumps in the roads now, and that's slowing traffic down. So I'm looking at it in a practical sense of, okay, so where's planning going with this? I can see now that they've got phase 3 out for actually changing the speed limits in certain areas. So I've looked at it, and
I heard on the radio it's going down to 30.
it's gone down to 30 in some places. I've overlooked it, and saw that I could see that they've done a practical sense in the way they're trying to make it around school areas.
They do that already, right? The school.
Yeah, that's right.
Slow down.
Yeah, it was 40. Now it's down to 30. So it's kind of media focused or social media that's saying that it's a push to get everywhere to be down at 30, but that's not the case. That's not what I can see. So that I'm looking at it from this is practical, this is okay. Everything that council do is kind of like a trial and error, and with every vision that's like hopefully it works. They don't always get it right. That's what I can see in history with council prior to the 2000. I can see that decisions were made that were not so good. But that's where we are now.
If it is an experiment, if they're trying to figure it out and they're actually spending money, and if it doesn't work out, then it's a waste of money.
That's right. So
back to the drawing board.
That's right, and that's why I've stepped in for this election, because I have the opportunity to and be able to say, okay, this isn't going to work. Let's look at it in a practical sense, depending on what portfolio you get. And I'm just going to take care of this part of the scene for Waitakere. I'm going to look at all the other suburbs as well and see what makes sense, what makes practical sense, because like you're saying, it's got to do with how the lay of the land is and what's going to encourage cyclists to get out there. Auckland Central is a different story, it's high population, and of course they will be cycling everywhere in a certain distance area though. So
is that why the cycle lanes are more prominent in Central?
Yeah, because
of that factor that they are close together.
It's scenery, So for Titirangi, those areas, when you become more enthusiastic with cycling, you want to look at scenery, and it's not saying that. I mean, they've decided to try and cut out vehicles altogether in Central. I can understand that. I can see why they want to do it. So but I'm focused on Waitakere, and what's going to be a benefit to the people. Yeah, for the people, by the people.
Yeah.
So just making sure that I listen. I'm a listener, and then I just tally up those who are saying, "Oh, this is a problem," and I'm quite happy to answer it and give them straight fact, and then try to reason and say, "Look, this is why." So, what's the other option? I don't look at it as this is the only thing, but this is what council and the vision by the mayor is asked for, and then I just look at it and go, oh, okay, well, what's another option? Because for me, there's more than one option, and what I look at it, the way I look at it is that you've got to have experience and understanding construction and infrastructure layout planning and what's practical, and you can't do that if you're only focused on policy, So, yeah.
So, yeah, it makes sense to rely on the people on the ground, like your local board, because they're the ones out there in the field and the public talking to everybody, and they relay the things back to you as a councillor, which then you have a meeting with the mayor, is that? Is that how it works, sort of?
Yeah, that's how it works.
So how many councillors are allocated for Waitakere?
For Waitakere, so you've got 2 councillors that want to be re-elected, and then you've got myself, Schuster, and then I can't remember his name. I think it's Kent. I can't remember the other guy. There's only a few of us.
And how many are allowed to be?
Two.
Oh, okay.
Two. So, which is fair enough. It used to be one, for each area, which kind of. So, the whole purpose of local council is that you can see that if you want to apply for the job, you don't have to be experienced. And I think they left that open in the rule to allow people to come forward that feel that they have the knowledge and experience to see the vision and carry it out.
Is that for
Keep
councillor?
within a budget, though.
That's for councillor?
Yeah, councillor and mayor.
Oh, okay.
So, and local board. So it's
So there's not like a thing where you can't be councillor unless you're local ward first and then have experience going up and go straight to...
No. So
unless you got the people behind you and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you've got people behind you. Whereas I'm independent.
Right.
I adhere to practical solutions. And I chose to be independent so that way I can confirm transparency without any influence by a community group or political party. And I think you need that on the board to have that diversity and bring new ideas, or if somebody's delivering an idea, I can question it and say, well, how about this? Let's talk about this then. If that's the direction you're wanting to go, everybody's wanting to go, let's have a practical sense and discussion about it. And I'm not about having 3-4 meetings about the same subject. I'm about, okay, yeah, that makes sense, do it. I'm very cautious of safety risks when it comes to anything that we do. Where's the safety risk? Look for safety and make that an issue. That's top of the line, the first thing. So I think that needs to be a primary focus, especially when it came to the ports. So, and it's not just the ports, it's also construction. So having that experience and knowledge and what they're having to deal with, I can look at it in a different perspective and be able to go, okay, try this, because this is current. And so knowing about the suburbs, I walked these streets in Waitakere area, I cycled this area, I cycled Central and North Shore and South Auckland. So I've watched it develop over the years, and I can see the good things that have come out of council, and I can see the not so good things. I can see why people are angry. I can see why they're dissatisfied with what the result they've got. And I can see the safety issues. And you kind of have to question who made this decision and be accountable, and the cost as well. So, yeah, there is an overhanging debt. And I can see with FSO talking about actually finding ways to control the costs. I can see where Wayne Brown is discussing ways of solutions. So it's going to be an interesting election this time round. It's one of the reasons why I stepped in, because this is an interesting one. So I've watched it over the years, and I've voted every time, and I felt that okay, this one's a little bit difficult. I like challenges, and I like to see that the people are happy with the result, because that's satisfying to me, that they're happy with the result. There's never going to be, it's not going to be an easy answer. It's not going to be a quick fix. But as long as the people are aware of this is the issue we've got, this is the solution we've found, and get feedback, because I think it's important that councillors are more involved with the community, not just leave it to the local board to deal with and sort out. I don't think that's fair at all. Right. You're supposed to be not just a councillor, you're supposed to be involved with your local boards and understand every aspect and be able to narrow it down and then look at solutions. And that's the role of the councillor, to say, okay, this funding here, is it going to work for this project? There's community funding that you have to deal with, and being able to share it out where it makes practical sense for moving communities forward. I can see that some areas have been focused on a little bit more than others, and so that's what I'm also here about, to make sure that the smaller voices get heard and those suburbs are also taken care of as well, because they pay their rates. They don't make complaints. They just wait for something to happen for their community, you know. And also bringing back the, you know, I am supportive of youth and elderly and disabled, because youth, as much as they're alive and pumping and partying and energetic and going to school, I'm really proud of how they've dealt with COVID, and it's about having an awareness of, you know, not being in fear of, but the reality of, if you became disabled, if you live your life and you become an elderly person, are you happy with the way situations are for you? Are you happy for the way that the services available for your elderly people? Because I don't know if it's a culture thing, but I was brought up with hundreds of people that were homeless, and the youngest was 6, and the oldest, elderly, would come from all over the world that would come to live with us. And so I got to see, in my family, we took care of everybody as best as we could, but they still had the right to leave and come and go as they pleased, as long as they had that grounding. And so that's where my family got involved with central government to look at employment opportunities. And so that was kind of like the grassroots at the beginning for council, and supporting infrastructure. And my grandfather, one of my grandfathers, was with the rail, so setting that up. And my other grandfather was a Māori warden chief for East Tamaki. So I got to see all of that, and I got to experience the hard work. You know, I wasn't just my parents made sure that I was out there mowing lawns, digging, and being involved with everything. So I think that's good grounding for me as a candidate, because it involved people and having a respect of whatever walk of life they came from. I'm empathetic to it, and I can understand where we are right now. As a community, we're quite kind of segregated, and I'm trying to look at it a way of making communities come closer together, because at the end of the day, say there's a disaster, you know, a natural disaster that happens, it's the community support that's going to help you get through that, you know. So I was there at the tornado assessment as well as the flooding in Kumeu, and it opened my eyes to, this is great, you know, council are doing a really good job, the best they can under such pressures, and looking at the suffering of those communities while they're going through it and meeting with them, you know. Horrible to see, but there was support there.
That Kumu thing, was that fault, infrastructure fault?
You've got
That was a drainage thing, right? That was a drainage thing that the council admitted that they failed to maintain, or something like that.
Well, so when it comes to terrain, right, and then you've got flash flooding, and you've got a lot of awas or streams and rivers that are supposed to be connecting, but as soon as they get blocked up, well, where's the overflow going to go? So South Auckland, they've got stormwater control, stormwater systems set up because it's so flat. And as you continue to build and develop in that area, they've come up with something that is practical in design, and I've seen it, and it's great. It's going to work. For West Auckland, it's a little bit difficult, because these houses were built at a certain time, and there was no. The weather was better. You knew when it was going to rain and how long for. So now we're at the point of climate change. It is affecting everybody, but we don't know to what. You can't predict where or how, and you can't. You can only deal with the disaster when it happens. You can, like on my Facebook, one of the voters asked me and said, "Oh, there's this stormwater main system, and I'm worried about it." And she gave me the address, and I went and had a look outside of my, job, and I had a look and did a video for her, so she understood what was going on. You know,
You have the CCTV for her?
No. It was just more of she was worried because of the way it was designed, and there's chambers there, and that they had some safety fencing up, and whether it was dangerous. So that's why I went, because the safety risk, just to have a look and to make sure that everything was okay. Her concern was that it was still temporary fencing, and it hadn't been changed yet, and I'm not quite sure what the answer is, because I don't have access to that engineering design or what's going on there. All I could see is that at the moment it's safe, it's fine. It's more the culvert. If the outlet was actually blocked or issues like that, I'd be really concerned. But we're kind of coming to the end of winter, so I think as long as I know that council have got staff out there doing maintenance, and I can see that the rivers are being maintained, and that's when it becomes an issue. As long as it's tidied up before winter, then we've got a better chance of not having another flood. So the concern was that because of intensification with the new developments that's going on, it does depend on location, and a lot of the developments are on reserves. They're not reserves now, but because the demand for housing, that became the option that we've got right now, in order to move it forward. COVID was messy, and I think every industry suffered as a result, also council. It cost them millions, but we battled on through. You do, regardless of the situation, and that's important, that as long as it's acknowledged that this has happened, and trying to look in the future of, okay, where's the potential of safety risks, where are the issues here, and trying to find a way to get around it.
Because I spoke about on the previous guests I've had, candidates as well, spoke about how the Unitarian plan calls for certain areas to be intensified housing. And you see a lot of, especially around Nui, you see people selling up their properties, and then the new owner building 3 new townhouses in its place, or 4. And then what's happening is that they've only got one garage for each of these places, and no one has one car anymore. So you got all these cars parked on the street now, and now the streets are narrow as it is, and now you got two sides of cars parked all the way up the street. And the other issue is how you going to get a fire truck through there.
Yeah, that's right. You would know that as an architect. You would know that.
Oh, because I had a fireman on the podcast before, and that's what he was saying. And I'm like, oh man, true. That's true. Because you touched on the services, like the infrastructure, like stormwater. So see that there's that as well. And I know at my parents' house, like my parents are down this long right away, but there's heaps of land down the bottom where my parents' house is, and already our neighbors hold, and some townhouses are getting built, right? But now there's going to be all these cars going up this one right away, and it's going to make our right away real busy, So I guess there's a lot of that happening around the city.
Yeah,
as well.
What's practical sense, right?
So it's things like that, like especially even with because I like to think that they've figured everything out already. They've got a plan. The council has a plan for everything. So when you think they make a decision and something else, the consequence of that decision leads to something that's, will annoy 100 people. And then you think, nah, they can't be that dumb. But sometimes it doesn't work out, eh?
That's right.
And I like to think that they're really playing for this, but sometimes I think, no, they haven't played for this.
Well, I think you trust in the professionals that they're making the right decision, and along with town planning, you trust that they're considering stormwater overflow. You trust that they're considering the population growth, which is the most important in regards to the complaints that were out there at that time. Not enough housing. So every time something becomes a major issue, council try to find an answer, and they can only use the resources that they've got that's available. So they try to push it through and get it through to people living in safe and sanitary homes. So when you're saying that intensification is not practical in some ways, you're right, they're not. But this got through somehow. I don't know how. I am not a candidate. I'm not a councillor, but I would question it. When it comes to location, and I'd say, well, okay, this is something that you need to reconsider, and but there's such the demand out there, and I think Wayne Brown made a good point about having commercial going into residential in some areas, in particular central city, because the young people want to be in the city. They don't like to travel the distance and enjoy the nightlife because they're young. That's another process, and it's not an easy process. But if that's what the council want to see happen, if that's what the mayor wants, then I'll look at it in a practical sense and say, oh yeah, no, that would work. Or I'll say, oh no, this isn't going to work because the way it's been designed. Because this is, to be honest, you have to know history about international growth of cities. A good example is Rome. So as time went by, they just started building on top of the city. Okay, because the young people are really the life and energy of a city, and if they go, oh well, this is boring, there's no life here, they'll move to where they're getting to have fun and work. So everybody goes towards where there's work available. And then a good example is Singapore. It's always been their infrastructure there's 10 million people in this area, and they're living in small boxes. Some people, in regards, because the rules weren't there at the time. I think council, with the way that building standards is great when you look at other countries and where they're at. So there's no one answer for that question you have. It's more of what experience does the councillors have to be able to say, yeah, that's a good idea, or do they just rely on, look, this is the drawing we've got for you, this lovely little pink drawing here, that's it. So I'm here to question, not to question and make anybody feel bad, but in order to help, so that's my main mission.
Because I'm a big advocate for work and fun. Work and fun, because man, I always think about this, because I've been overseas, and it's not gonna be ever like overseas, like some places, because it's not the same climate or not the same tourist attraction kind of thing. But I don't know, it could be. But for me, when it comes to work and having fun, I've been thinking about it more, because right now I feel like everything closes too early in the city.
Yeah, well, there's other cities that go 24/7.
Yeah, and you can't, if you're hungry, only place you can go to is McDonald's, and you don't want to go there. It's unhealthy. If you want to have a late night, or go to Balmoral, because that's the only place, all those Chinese places in Balmoral open till 2 a.m. That's the only place you can go to get some food other than McDonald's. 24 hours. But things like that. Even shopping, because
it comes down to a balance.
It comes down to being convenient too, and that's when the public transport thing comes into it. Because if say you need to rely on public transport, but you also need to go shopping. The only place you can go shopping is is pack and save in Countdown because all the retail places are closed. By the time you hop on the bus and get there, it's closed.
Yeah, that's
you
right.
gotta wait for the weekend. So it's more, for me, it's more convenience and availability of things you can do. Yeah.
So I have some suggestions in the way that we've actually structured our timetable for work, education, and it does clash, but there's a balance here that you've got to look at with regards to international, how they've progressed. Those cities have progressed. Ours is a population growth, so we're kind of like we're 10, 20 years when it comes to technology and being actually having a grounding with this current local governance and central governance, the system that we have right now. But we're also behind 10, 20 years when it comes to population growth. And the direction for Vision for a Mayor is to keep Auckland City alive and well. And we've had to deal with the issue of COVID, so getting that population growth, we've got to be able to support the infrastructure to have it there. And then, like you said, having those facilities, those services open, that's when it steps in. So it's kind of predetermined that population will grow in Auckland anyway. You can't say when or how many, but Auckland is one of the safer countries to move to when it comes to diversity, cultural awareness, and more of a community. I think the areas that we kind of I need to make aware for councillors and for the mayor is what I'm talking about is when your hours of work. So I don't know if you notice, but when it's school holidays, right, the traffic is beautiful. You're just like heaven. And so
especially when the university's out there.
Yeah. Especially with the new motorway was necessary for West Auckland, definitely necessary for West Auckland, but going through Avondale, the motorway has increased,
because they
so
remember
more
the
lanes.
new lanes to the motorway. And
Yeah.
you realise now that they needed to do that
They
because
did.
it's still jam packed. So if they didn't, it would be even worse.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so what you've got there is an issue with vehicle imports, right? So it's cheap to purchase a vehicle than what it was, say, 30 years ago, 20 years ago.
So more on the road.
More on the road, And New Zealanders have come used to that lifestyle. And it's not just about practicality. It's got to do with the terrain of the earth. I mean, the terrain of the Waitakere area, to get to Piha or to get to out Massey and further that way.
Yeah.
It's not the public transport is just not. You just don't have confidence in public transport. And I remember catching the bus at 1990s and had the same problem.
Yeah.
I'm a teenager going, "Where's the bus?" So I think it's having that understanding of how you're going to develop further for Auckland to grow, on a good balance. Because if you have a rush of immigration, you're going to come up with more complaints. It's kind of I'm looking at on the fringe areas with development, because if you just pack everybody into one area with intensification, right, it's got to have that support there. So there's infrastructure in certain areas, and then going up further on the fringe, well, you can develop and design in a different way that it's going to self-support. So they were looking at out. I know a developer was looking at out Manukau where he had his own kind of like community that was independent. I don't know if he's actually developed it any further, but it was a great idea. Then looking at for me, I'm saying wait and look at new technology and design when it comes to rail or buses, instead of just rushing in and going, yeah, we'll buy this for 70 million and chucking it in there, because
the light rail they were throwing up there, the light rail down Dominion Road, that was one of the
it's
proposals.
interfering with businesses, and Central Auckland took a big hit with that, especially the Restaurants Association. So they all felt the pinch.
If
And
COVID
you're
wasn't
out
enough,
at night and you're like, there's nothing open, So
if COVID wasn't enough,
yeah, if COVID wasn't enough. And I think with everything that's going on right now, we have to acknowledge that even though our youth are very silent, they are actually very aware of what's going on, and they are worried,
Especially with our youth, because they're the ones that we really want to hear their voices, right? And with the problem with no one voting for local government, I think it was the lowest it's been.
This time round.
This time around, it was lower than last time. I think I heard on the radio.
There's still another week to go. We're looking at 180,000 votes now that have been, they've actually counted. So what do you think that is? How can we get more people to vote, or how can we get more people to care about local government? I'd like to suggest that they introduce political science at the age. And it's not something that will take a year to learn, unless you want it to be a year to learn. And that depends on how much history you want to know. I think just the basics and understanding how important their vote is and how it affects their area, and looking at all the issues that are going on right now. I know I interviewed some youths and they were like, I don't care. I don't care. I just want my bus to turn up, And
there you go. There's a reason to vote. You want your bus to turn up quicker.
That's right. So, and then there were some of the youth that were saying, I want to vote, and
because what's the age? 18, is it?
18.
Oh,
it's
yeah.
18. So when I was 16, which is a few years ago, I wanted to vote. As soon as I got my license, I wanted to vote. So to hear their voices made me think that was decades ago when I wanted this to happen. And it's about acknowledging not just the voters or the elderly or some of us who are middle aged.
Who's that?
It's nobody in here. It's the youth. They are the future. They're will retire and they take over those positions and they become council. I'd like them to be aware, if they do go into council, how the role actually is and their responsibilities, and understanding how it helps their community if they decide they want to go down that path. I'm not trying to deter them from it, but just give them more understanding. I think the focus for youth right now is on the Kardashians and every other thing that's out there about fun. But for my young adult, it told me that what he's dealing with is just all the problems that are going on, not just with New Zealand, but internationally. And so he's shown me that he's actually hiding behind this fear, but trying not to show it, because with COVID, they did struggle during that time, and even though they put on a smile, they do need counselling. Some of them, there's no way of getting around that, and it's been supportive for our youth and our communities. We've become this society where we view youth as, oh, you're fine, you've got your phone, yeah, there's your TV, go to school, and by distancing ourselves from whatever they're doing or enjoying, we're actually distancing them from their future of being able to understand. And I think we kind of rely too much on education systems to fix it, just you fix it, or we kind of rely on community groups to fix it. And it's about, it does come down to the parents, whether they want to see progression and for the youth, because all parents love their youth. But the issue is there that they are coming less, they are becoming distant as well. You can see that in the difference with a young youth who does have the support from their parents, and also has the support from their community, that they excel. So yeah, that's an important issue for me, to make sure that they have the knowledge when it comes to policy, knowledge about their vote and what difference it makes. I'm not worried what political party they choose. It's more of that they have the understanding of what it's going to do to help them in the future.
I see business and entrepreneurship. Because once you get into those kind of fields, once you get into that realm, now you take notice to what the laws are, and then you might want to see what's, how they can affect your business, or how can improve your business, or whatever, and then you can go into policies and all that. I think. Yeah,
that's right. Because
it forces you to. It's an incentive to look at the policies when it affects you, your at least business does. If you start a business, then you want to know what the taxes are and the tax laws and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
And who comes in, who's in the government, and blah blah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's right, because it does affect your import goods.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It's all of it. They're all independent systems, and once you can grasp as a youth how that system works, then you're quite easily to pick up everything else as well. I think you said about, what did you just say before? I think I looked at how the youth are coping in Europe, and also areas like Western society, and they have the same issues, but their interests are different compared to Auckland and New Zealand. But what I can see is there are youth that are becoming less interested in the actual work, actual physical work, and that it's about being on social media, selling a product and or a service of some sort.
More the tech side.
Yeah, it's like a side hustle, right? And that's great, completely great. I think with my background and the work experience I've had, it's made me stronger as a person, to be able to be independent and to be able to say, as a female, there's no challenge that I can't put myself and focus and work towards, and understand how that's made me better as an adult. So physical work, I think, is important. It's a learning curve, even if you decide that you don't like the job. It's more of having the experience, and I'm more respectful because of the industry that I've been involved with, of men, to be honest, and the hard challenges that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, the stress that they deal with. So I can see how if youth are choosing a path, which I've seen that's happening over in Europe, they no longer want to do any physical work at all. They want AI. They want what's delivery services? What's that guy's name?
It's in Korea.
for New Zealand,
Uber Eats.
Uber Eats, yeah. That's right. It is. We've become reliant on services that are kind of international trade, right?
But
Amazon.
Those services like Uber Eats, that's more convenience. And I think, see, I'm big on that now. I'm big on convenience. Like I want to teleport to here to my work in under 5 minutes. You know.
Yeah.
Under
right.
2 seconds.
Yeah, that's right. It's the I think it's the overload of pressure that we put on ourselves with work commitments, and you become less time for family.